Thank you for joining us on Salt and Pepper Unleashed. This ain't your grandma's nursing home. I'm pleased to be joined today by Deb Brown-Nally, a real estate broker with Carpenter Realtors. Helping clients sell or buy homes and moving into the next phase of their lives truly feeds her soul. She understands the process can be stressful, but she is well equipped. Building on skills acquired during a 33-year career in education, counseling, and administration, she's able to educate and advise her clients with the latest real estate market trends and data. Deb, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And before we get started, I do want to note that today is a special day and you have come prepared, equipped. I feel out of sorts here. Today is actually April Fool's Day. You have come prepared with your green shirt. I have failed to do so. So luckily, we do have our cups in front of us and our literature here that's got some green tint to it. So I'm going to say I qualify with that. Hopefully,
there you
go. You've already out.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day to you as well. So. We invited you to share your expertise on the realm of real estate and selling a home, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the connection you have with a couple of folks here at Greenwood Village South, specifically in this room right now. So GVS IT technician and current cameraman Belmir Husejinovic was a student at Northwood Elementary School in Franklin while you were principal there, and our Director of Community Relations, Jenni Bartram, began her career teaching at the same school with you at the helm. What can you tell us about each of them? Any inside secrets or stories you can share?
Well, I would not have recognized Belmir when I walked in today because in my brain, he's still 9 years old, walking the halls of Northwood Elementary as a little owl. So it was great to reconnect with him and get a big hug from him today. And Jenni, I was telling her earlier, I remember her interview probably 20-some years ago. She was one of my first hires as a new principal at Northwood Elementary. So it's great to be reconnected and see everybody again.
That is very cool. It's a small world, isn't it?
It is a small
world. Now, weren't
world.
you telling me earlier that Jenni was your third pick?
No,
I'm just kidding.
Not.
I'm just kidding. You did not say that. I'm just joking around. And for our listeners, I think we would fail them tremendously if we didn't share. You're talking about you didn't recognize Belmir because last time you saw him was a little 9-year-old boy walking around the halls. Belmir is a grown man. He is.
I know. I hear he's tech Jesus around here.
6'7", something like that. Is that right, Belmir? 6'7", 6'8".
I was shocked
off.
when I walked in and saw him. Actually,
he is a grown man around here nowadays. So. But just very cool to kind of see things come full circle.
It is so
like that.
fun to see, especially the elementary students you had as adults, as productive adults, and have found their way into society and into the world and contributing. And so, it warms my heart.
It's neat. You really haven't gotten away from what fills your cup up professionally, whether it was, teaching and molding young minds to, finding the right next phase of life for individuals.
Right.
Really, at any stage of adulthood, it's kind of the same thing that fuels you.
It is. Jenni and I were just talking about that as educators. Working with students and family really was what it was all about. And when I retired after a fabulous 33-year career, I really had no intentions of another career. I was just going to work real estate alongside my husband, who has been working it for 40-some years. So started that just here and there, and then it just evolved into another full-time career to the point where he and I now manage the Franklin Carpenter office of 17 agents. So it's fun, though. I love it.
You would fit in quite nicely around here because we have a whole community of residents who have retired multiple times, and it turns out they're just not good at retiring because they just stay involved. So that's awesome.
That is awesome.
All right, so let's turn our attention to the meat of today's podcast. As our future residents approach, that next phase of life, they've entered retirement and they're looking to potentially downsize. They often have questions about selling their homes and downsizing specifically while they contemplate that chapter. So first of all, the biggest competitor we have is not any real competitor, any other community. It's the existing home of that individual. There's so much inertia that is created when you actually kind of create a home out of a house or a condo. And transition and change is hard. So what is your approach for helping folks overcome that hurdle when they're teetering on the decision, and you know that in your gut that move is the right thing for those folks, and specifically, a less recognized move to a life plan community like this being the right option? How do you help them?
First, you just want to listen to them. A lot of times, I'm contacted by families before I'm contacted by the actual aging seller, right? And so when you meet with the seniors, I really just want to listen and find out how they feel about moving. What are their fears? What are their concerns? It's probably the home they raised their family in, or at least they've been in for several years and have acquired a lot of things and have built a lot of memories. And sometimes that's just really hard or overwhelming to think about transitioning to another place. So the first thing is just listen and find out what is going on, what are their fears, and then how can I best address those. So if they have family close by, I always encourage them to get their family involved in the process so that it's not so overwhelming. And then I can, start introducing opportunities like GVS to folks, and would always encourage them to come take a tour, get to know the staff here. One of the things I love about this facility is that anytime, and I've helped a senior transition to this facility, but anytime I was here to meet with him, the staff was friendly. They were always happy to be here, but more importantly, the residents were happy to be here. You could tell it just hanging out in the library or hanging out in the lobby. People like it here. Mm-hmm. So I would just encourage folks to get out and try to ease whatever pain they're feeling about moving by experiencing the lifestyle.
So, I'm going to switch gears here a little bit. We hear the cliche saying all the time, home is where the heart is, or home is where you make it. And you're in the business of, yes, selling homes or selling houses, but really, I think someone with the right intention in your role is helping people find their homes. And so talk to me a little bit about the difference between maybe some of your competitors and just trying to sell a house or the next dwelling versus you finding that right fit. And you kind of mentioned it. It's how do you feel when you walk in the door? Is everybody happy? Is everyone engaging? And that is a comment that we get so often that it's impressive when people walk in and they can feel that warmth amongst everyone.
Sure. You definitely feel a community of neighbors here when you walk in. That's one of the things I think was also I liked most about it. But back to your question, there's a designation called Senior Real Estate Specialist, SRES. I spent time getting that designation a couple years ago because I knew this was a population I cared deeply for, and I think it takes a patient, skilled realtor to work with seniors because a lot of times they don't do email. They don't do electronics. They want to hear and see things in person, and that just takes more time. They have stories to tell, and you have to be willing to sit and listen and take the time to gently help them transition to that next phase, because it's probably the last phase, the last time they're going to be making that kind of a move. So I definitely think with my competition, those of us that have that seniors real estate designation, we set ourselves aside for this population already, just because we've had the course, we have the skills, we know that it's a different population than working with the family of young kids or, getting ready to move to a subdivision. Yeah. But so, what was your question?
Well, so first of all, I didn't realize you had that designation, but that's impressive in and of itself. I would venture to guess, and you talked about some of the soft skills that, they seem common sense, but I've seen it too often. People don't truly apply that skill set. And I would imagine that there have been so many times in your career working with seniors, I'm sorry, your second career,
Yeah.
working with seniors, finding that right fit for them, is that in the process of listening, you have made assumptions that now you're ruling out, and you've kind of ruled things out where you're like, well, maybe now that is a possibility because you have listened and you've opened up, and you're hearing things that you wouldn't have heard otherwise without giving that space for the conversation to breathe.
Absolutely. Yes. And I do think in my particular case, having a degree in counseling, a degree in administration, that I have developed skills over the years to be able to do all those things you just said. Sometimes it's a balancing act because the actual buyer or seller, the senior, may want something different than the kids or the family want. So it's a very fine line to walk to keep the senior empowered in making all those decisions, but to also have the family support and helping everyone work together. That's a hard balancing act sometimes.
I've seen that before, and yes, it can be very difficult. You know, I would venture to guess that it's not too far removed from the difficult relationship as a teacher and administrator that you had
Sure.
when it came to children and parents. And, you know, you always hear about those dynamics and how difficult they are. You're kind of on the other end of the spectrum now. And so it's kind of maybe neat, frustrating at the same time, but regardless, you're able to pull a lot of that skill set that you've built into this role. So that's
very
great.
rewarding when you get to the end.
Yeah.
You know, the journey could be bumpy and rough, but to get everyone to the end and have that senior feel good about where they're landing and have the family feel good about where they're landing, that is enough reward to venture through the rough journey sometimes. And they're not always rough. Sometimes everybody's on the same page. It's just, let's just go.
Yeah.
But, you know, more often than not, it's a balancing act.
Absolutely. You talked about, you know, fears and concerns, and you mentioned a lot of times they have a lot of things that's creating that kind of inertia, or sometimes it's just simply a lot of memories and that sentimental value. What are some other common objections that you've experienced when it comes to seniors making that move?
I think fear is another one. As folks get older, they're not as agile or as strong, you know, to do some of the physical stuff themselves. So fear of how do I even make this happen is overwhelming sometimes. Another obstacle, I think, is just knowing it's the right decision. Also knowing it's probably the last time I'm going to move and having to internalize that as this is the last time, you know, I'm going. And, you know, just having that whole aging process kind of take over and be a little overwhelming as well.
It is a big decision. It's a very big, moving, buying a home is a big decision.
Absolutely.
Making this move, I argue sometimes, is the largest decision, or I guess the decision with the most gravity that anyone's ever going to make in their lives, because not only am I moving to my new home, I'm moving to the community that's going to take care of me throughout every remaining stage of my life, whether it's, you know, 10 years or 25 years. Mm-hmm. And so very.
That's what I was just trying to say. That's what I was trying to say.
There you go. Yeah. We're on the same page then. I love it. So let's switch gears a little bit. And this is what I know a lot of viewers or listeners really want to know about. What is the current real estate market like in Johnson County, and how long are homes typically staying on the market? I've
got all that information for you. I just pulled it off the MyBor website before I came. So in Johnson County, we are still the real estate industry is still very strong. There's still a lack of inventory, so it's still kind of a seller's market. But the median sales price in Johnson County for the month of February was around $333,450. Average or median days on the market was only 23. That's still a relatively small number. The average price per square foot that was sold was $153 per square foot. And at any point in given time, the active inventory for Johnson County is roughly around 285 homes on the market.
Wow. 285 homes. So how long, so you talked about your husband being in real estate for decades.
Forever.
How long have you been actively engaged in your role?
I've been in real estate 7 years.
7 years. So looking back to really, I would say your biggest transition was from pre-pandemic to post-pandemic. Your husband has experienced a lot of ups and downs with the 2007, 2008 housing crash being probably the most pronounced. How does this compare to 7 years ago in the market, generally speaking?
Pre-pandemic, everything was just starting to ratchet up, it seems like. And then 2020 to 2022, things were insane.
Yeah.
Not just because of the pandemic, but the housing market was insane.
Absolutely.
We would list property and within hours have multiple offers. Within hours have offers 10, 20, 30,000 above list price. It would have offers waiving inspections, which would always give me a stomach ache, that people would be that desperate to get a home. They're going to buy it without really knowing if it has any issues or not. But I would say now we have kind of ratcheted back down. I would call this more of a normal market.
Okay.
So back when life was crazy and we were seeing home prices soar, I think appreciation was about 15 to 18% a year on a home. And now we're kind of back down to that normal market of 3 to 4 to 5% a year.
Which is probably great for a lot of our folks out there that are listening that are in the market to buy a home, that it's not as scary of a landscape as it was just a few years ago. You speak to that. I can share a few anecdotal stories. We had one team member here who, just like you said, they listed within hours, had 20-some showings scheduled with probably 7 or 8 offers, a handful of those being over asking price and cash. Yeah. And I'm just like, this is absurd. Yeah. Unfortunately for me, I got to be careful with how I phrase this. Fortunately, I'm married with 3 children, but if I was a bachelor, I would live in a small box at that point in time, just so I could sell my home and kind of reap those benefits. Yeah. And I know some people, looked at it that way, but others, it's just tough when you're trying to get in for the first time. There's a lot of new construction in the area. What can you tell us about, what that looks like in the Johnson County market specifically?
Sure, there is a lot of new construction in Johnson County. We were very happy about that because we hope it helps with the housing shortage that we have for folks. And I didn't know, a lot of people probably don't know this, but builders are able to give a lot lower interest rate than your typical mortgage lenders.
How do they do that? I've noticed those advertisements.
That
I'm
is
always
not
curious.
inside my wheelhouse. Okay. I don't know how they do it.
I wonder if they're self-financing.
It could be.
Those.
I don't know. I just know that it's like where interest rates are today in the high 6s. You can go to the builder and get the high 4s, high 5s. Okay. And that's the best you're ever going to find. Yeah. We will never, ever get to the 2s and 3% again. Those were false numbers to begin with, just made up to help the economy move forward. And we're never going to see those numbers again. Yeah. We're never going to crash again either like we did in 07 and 08. So a lot of people saw that rise of houses and think they're stuck in a house because they're afraid the market's going to crash. Market crashed then because of fraudulent lending and mortgage situations. Those are no longer, it's hard to get a mortgage loan. You got to almost give your firstborn up to get a mortgage loan. So, and there's a lot more rules the lenders have to follow. So unless there's not an economist we follow that predicts a housing crisis. We just need more houses. So back to your question, builders in Johnson County, it's a great thing for us, a great thing for the county, I think, too. We're still considered one of the fastest growing counties in the state.
Yeah, and Johnson County, by all regards, is a great place to live regardless of your age, whether you're raising a young family or retirement and living, the last chapters of your golden years. It's a great place. So no wonder that people are continuing to move towards the county in that sense. So we talk about the price per square foot and the average price of the home or home value. Help me understand, what is your process for arriving at a list price for a client's home?
Sure. What I'll do first, and this is always complimentary, there's no cost to this. I'd like to get my eyes on the house. So just a quick tour of a home to see what amenities you have. Do I think there needs to be any updating done, that kind of thing. Then I'll go back and pull up comps, comparables that are either active, pending, or sold. And I usually look for homes built around the same time as the subject home, similar square footage as the subject home, similar acreage, and similar, if it's in the subdivision, similar subdivision kind of thing. And so we'll look and try to find those homes and then make adjustments for different kinds of things, if it's square footage or amenities, or number of bedrooms, fireplaces, bathrooms, whatever we need to do. Just kind of making adjustments to come up with a good price range.
How common is it that you would put your eyes on the home? When I ask this, how common is it compared to other agents and brokers? Because that's something that I've not experienced. Someone actually saying, "Well, let me come and look first
Well,
before."
let me come and look.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's just how I was trained to
Yeah.
do it. So I feel like I have to get my eyes on it to give you the best range. Otherwise, I'm just going off of paper or what the tax records say. Please do not think Zestimates from Zillow are accurate.
I only think they're accurate when they're really good.
When they're really good.
Yeah, that's the only time I think they're
Because
accurate.
all Zillow does is take your house, draw a circle around it, and they'll pull the actives, pending, solds, but they're not comparing anything else.
Yeah.
They're just comparing what has sold around you. So you could have dumps around you that don't sell for very much, and vice versa. You could be a dump and have all
compared
the
to-
nice
yeah,
homes around you,
absolutely.
that they've put into there. So you really need to get a professional opinion from a realtor.
And it's such a logical, common sense approach, but I'm curious how common that practice really is. It's something that seems to be an absolute necessity to get a true picture of where your home is compared to the comparable market.
Absolutely.
And without a professional coming in and looking at it, and then I would imagine then you're able to even make some suggestions to the homeowners at that point. What's going to maybe increase the value or make it more marketable, or maybe move it a little faster. So
Yeah.
what are some of those common suggestions that you find yourself making?
Sure. So I'll first look at, do we need a deep clean or declutter? Those are the two D's that I always tell folks to start with. Declutter, first of all. Get all the stuff off your shelves. Get all the 45 pictures you have of your family on the wall. Take those down. People don't want to come in and see your stuff. They want to come in and see your home. So let's declutter as much as possible, and then we got to deep clean it. Because if people come in and see cobwebs on your ceiling fan or dirt around your baseboard, that's what they're going to remember, right? So we want them to come in and see a clean home. I just heard something the other day that somebody walks in a home and within the first 12 seconds, they know whether this home is going to be potential for them or not. 12 seconds. So it's really important that first impression when they walk into a home is a nice, neat, clean look.
It's interesting. As a home buyer, three times now, it's a very emotional, psychological process. You look at the information and it's objective, but the second you walk in the door or pull in the driveway, it becomes extremely subjective.
Yeah.
And when you say that 12 seconds, I recall walking into some of the homes that we've looked at, and yes, it's like, all right, I don't want to waste anyone's time here.
Right.
And I'm sure, that's essentially probably a huge component of your kind of day-to-day operations is the time that's put into that.
Right.
And so it's great to know that that's the case, but it's also good for those folks selling homes to know that that's the case.
Right,
and you've
exactly.
got to make that impression.
And I try to be as transparent as possible, understanding that their heart and soul is in this home. It is their home, but we are selling the house.
Yeah.
So, and try to help them say, gently say, okay, those 5 dog crates, they need to go in the garage, or all those dolls on your shelf that are antiques and things, they need to be put away. So just say, here's what I usually just refer back to the data. Here's what the data tells
Yeah.
us. This is what you need to do. Now, as far as major stuff, a lot of people think they need to redo a kitchen or redo a bathroom. You're never going to see return on your investment in that. But two places you will: paint and flooring. So if you've got rough walls or purple walls or something that just needs touched up, invest in paint. It's not very expensive. It just takes a little bit of time. Same with flooring. Get some, if you've got carpets stained and they're not going to be cleaned, or flooring with big scuffs and holes and things, let's get that. Those are the two main things: flooring and paint. You can invest that and get your money 3 or 4-fold back.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Yeah. Kitchens and bathrooms tend to be very, very expensive.
They are very expensive.
Unless you're going to be using those, you're probably not going to get those dollars back. I'm glad to know that the 12 seconds is on the front end, because if we were to ever sell our home, we have 3 young, very active children. And as soon as you go to the basement, which is kind of the play area, the walls are rough.
Yeah.
Let's just say the walls are rough. And I would say 80% of that's from me playing with them. So once they got to the basement, we would definitely be investing in some paint and fixing some of that drywall. So repairs and updates, really carpet paint, biggest things. What about, you talk about decluttering, but what about staging? I know that's a big, could be a big proponent, or I guess catalyst for selling a home. What kind of recommendations do you make there?
I do think less is more. So again, if you've got big chunky furniture, we want people to feel the house is open, rooms are bigger, so less is more. I'll just keep it simple. It's nice to have some furniture in it just so people can see, how things are laid out. They can see where the dining room table goes. They can see if they're sectional, will fit here in this space, or if their king bed will fit in this room. So that stuff is great. But I also think the house is better completely empty versus overcrowded clutter.
Absolutely. And the clutter is one thing, but you mentioned it too, the pictures. I tell you what again, it's that psychological, emotional component for me, but even if it's staged nicely and, cleaned and decluttered, when I see the sentiment that this is someone else's home, it's difficult for me to see it as my home.
Exactly.
And you said it, I've never heard it stated this way, but it makes sense. You're not selling their home, you're selling a house to someone else, and they've got to come to terms with that. Right. And I would imagine, just from the little bit that we've talked here today, that you've got a knack for kind of walking people through that emotional journey of realizing, yes, my cat figurines are lovely to me, but they may not be everyone's cup of tea.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, that's
correct.
That's really cool. We talk about decluttering, downsizing. It kind of goes right in line with that. I would imagine that's a big maybe objection, obstacle, that not necessarily selling their home, but finding their next home, finding that senior's next home, knowing that they are going to be downsizing. And decluttering is one thing, but getting rid of your things is another. So what do you do to help your folks plan for that and potentially a move to a community like Greenwood Village South?
One thing is to start early. Once you start having the conversation about moving, especially if you're downsizing, you've got to start early and start planning. Put a plan together. If you know you're moving to one of the village flats here or one of the apartments here, come and get measurements so you know how big the rooms are and you know how big your stuff is, and you can compare. Get your family involved so that they can start divvying up things they might want to take. And then there's professionals that help with downsizing. Lots of good people out there that will help with downsizing. They'll take the things that you maybe don't want, the family doesn't want, and they can help you either put those in a sale or donate those to places. So it's just good to have a plan and to work through what you want, what you don't want, what the family wants.
Yeah. I'm going to put you on the spot here, and I'm not looking for anything scientific. I want kind of your gut response here. What is the percentage of individuals' belongings that are actually valuable to someone else, meaning someone else actually wants them versus what they think is valuable. So if I have 100% of my stuff, I see residents often think 90% of this is really
Still
great
good.
stuff. But then I see maybe 5% is what people actually really want. So what do those numbers look like for you?
Gosh.
Because you've got a lot more exposure to it from a different perspective than I do.
If it's a collectible of some kind, someone's gonna want it. If it has sentimental value to your family, somebody's gonna probably want it. Other than that, antiques really aren't a thing anymore.
Not anymore.
And so even though you've had this piece of furniture for 50, 60, 70 years, there's really no value in it at the level it used to be.
All right, Deb, I'm going to put you on the spot. I want a number because I want our listeners to hear loud and clear. Nobody wants your stuff.
Nobody wants your stuff. You love your stuff, but people already have stuff like yours. So
absolutely.
Unless you're helping someone set up a new home or you're donating to a shelter or somewhere where that stuff can really be used, you're just going to have to get rid of it.
Yeah. Have you been very participatory with folks? Maybe not as a direct resource, but just kind of on the outside looking in, and have any kind of wild stories of people with 17 of the same thing or things like that?
I could speak primarily just from my grandparents' moves and they grew up during the Depression, so it was hard for them to throw away stuff,
Absolutely.
right? So cleaning out my grandma's home, I remember finding a bag full of soap slivers.
No kidding.
Like, when the bar of soap gets down to just a little sliver, she had a whole baggie of those.
Well, you get those wet enough, you can squeeze them
That was
together.
it, right?
Absolutely.
She was never going to run out of soap.
Yeah.
And then she also had a whole baggie of the little plastic things that come in flower arrangements that hold the card.
Yeah.
A whole bag of those, just because you never know when those might come in handy.
And
maybe 1,000 rubber bands.
I never know when those would ever come in handy other than a flower arrangement and putting the little card on.
Right?
That is wild. That is
so
wild.
there's those kind of stories out
That's
there. But
very interesting. And I'm sure it's much more humorous on kind of the outside looking in, or on the, kind of once that process has closed than it is going through that process. I know that it can be tumultuous, especially emotionally.
And
at
I don't
times.
work directly with those folks in this capacity, but I do have good people that I know that is their job. They are downsizers. They specialize in working with seniors as well. So,
and I think that's the biggest thing that I would want folks to understand, and I'm sure you do too as well, is that there's resources available, regardless of what your challenge is. There are resources available that specialize with our demographic that we serve, that can help this process along and make it as smooth as possible.
absolutely, there are tons of resources out there.
Well, very good. So, Deb, I really, really appreciate your time and expertise that you've shared with us today. I do have one last question. This is our signature question. This has panned out to be my favorite question of every podcast. If you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be and why?
I think it would be to be remembered as a shining light, as a positive person. Even during dark days and ugly days, there's still a bright light. I consider myself definitely not a glass half empty, but I don't even think I'm a glass half full. My glass is full and running over.
I love
all
that.
the time. And that's how I want to be remembered.
Well, if this tells you anything, this is probably our 12th podcast that we've recorded. And there may be one other time that I can recall coming into the conference room here, and one of our guests is sitting with the team members here, talking about the good old days of elementary school, and you've had a smile on your face the entire time. So I would say that you are living that to this date, and so keep doing that. And really appreciate your presence here on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
I truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
let's just go back to that.
That's why I said Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Let's just go back and read that